So, raise of hands, anybody has not heard of Dr. Wallach and his message? Okay, so, because it's not me that came up with this or discovered this, it's this man right here, Dr. Joe Wallach. And he's a very impressive human being, not for his credentials, but it's worth going through. He's got 4 degrees. The first ones were in agriculture, with a minor in field crops. That was back in 1962. He's got a doctor of veterinary medicine, so he's known as a vet, but to my knowledge, he was never a practicing veterinarian, because his next degree here was in comparative pathology, which is doing autopsies on animals and people and comparing the differences and running the slides and all this stuff. So one of his biggest projects here as a comparative pathologist was doing 20,000 autopsies for the National Institutes of Health. This is in the 60s and 70s. 17,000 and some change of those are on over 454 species of animals, which gives him actually the biggest data set of any human being who's ever lived. Nobody's ever done that many autopsies on that many different species. And within that project, there was 3,000 humans for comparison. And that project was outlined to look for the contribution of pollution on disease and death in animals and humans. And the conclusion of that project was that every animal and every human being that dies of what the autopsy would say natural causes is actually a nutrient deficiency. You can trace every single death and every single disease to a nutrient deficiency of some kind, if they weren't hit by a car or some sort of outright toxicity. But pollution had 0 impact on the health and on the longevity of all the animals and all the humans in the study. And with that data set, he got a lot more interesting information from it, because it's one of the biggest data sets that's ever out there. If you read studies most studies are done on like 100, 500 people, maybe, rarely do you have a set of 20,000 autopsies to work from, and especially not from that many. 10 million chemistries and histopathologies done as well. And of course, he didn't do that all himself. He had teams of people helping him out. So with this data set, this is basically the major start of his career, and he was led on to, eventually he was working for NASA in the Yerkes Primate Research Center at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, and it's there that he was publicized as discovering the first non-human case of cystic fibrosis. And this was quite a big deal around the world, because previously to that, cystic fibrosis was only known as a genetic disease in humans, and it still is actually today. So with his findings, there was that cystic fibrosis and muscular dystrophy are essentially the same thing. And he already knew this, because in all these autopsies, we know what cystic fibrosis and muscular dystrophy looks like in animals, especially with white muscle disease in lambs. It's very straightforward. It's also the exact same deficiency that leads to enlarged heart, athletes' heart, not congestive heart failure, cardiomyopathy, heart failure, or Keyshawn disease, and sudden infant death syndrome as well. So when Emory University published that, they were very excited about it, because they said, now we can study cystic fibrosis in animals, which is, you can't really do a lot of research on humans. You can't cut up a human and see what's going on. So he came out after that and he said he could create this model. Once they asked him, can you breed in more monkeys so that we can study? He said, you don't need a lot of time, and you don't need to breed them in. It's not a genetic thing. All you need to do is take trace mineral away from them, and they will develop this problem. So they fired him for that, and that was in 1978. And that led him onto a crusade of trying to educate the world about this, and the fact that there are no genetically transmitted diseases, that each one of them are nutritional deficiencies of some kind, especially all the major ones. So once he was fired for that, and he went on his crusade of going and telling the world about it, he was invited to go work at the Naturopathic College in Oregon and get his naturopathic degree, and he's been practicing since 1982 and licensed in California and Oregon since 1982. So it's well over 35 years that he's been a licensed ND practicing. And of course that trickles into all of us, his ND career, not his comparative pathology career, because that's behind the scenes, and now he's much more out in the open. So, and by the way, for me, the way that I got into this, it wasn't actually from a CD. I was introduced to this because I was born crippled, and my friends knew this, and I had a miraculous cure. I was born with my hips dislocated, basically, so I stood like this for 25 years afterwards with nerve damage and back pain and neck pain and all that kind of stuff. I couldn't really play sports or roughhouse or run around or anything like that, so I was a pretty miserable human, basically. And along with those same deficiencies comes insomnia and headaches, stomach pains, and all the same generalized problems. And within 6 days, actually, with Dr. Wallach's protocol, I was, completely cured of all my major symptoms. I could move my neck all the way around. I could sleep. I didn't have pain anymore. So I got pretty serious about spreading this message, and put into the hands of Dr. Wallach for him to train me and Chris and me to give his message as well. And we do this on Instagram every day as well. We've got many people who come to us every day for this information, and we put it out day and night. We churn out this information as much as we possibly can. So this is kind of the basics of where we're at. Just slide this. We've got medical doctors on one side, and that's most of what most people have heard of is medical doctors, right? They don't make TV shows about natural doctors. They don't make movies about acupuncturists, right? They don't glamorize or glorify chiropractors or nutritionists or anything like this. What the world knows about is MD-directed medicine. And that's known as allopathic medicine in technical terms. And this word down here, reductionism, these guys, the MDs, are the only ones in the medical field at all that actually practice reductionism. The whole rest of the healing world is based on holism. It means we treat the whole human being under the understanding that the human body can heal itself when you give it what it needs. When the human body has what it needs, the right environment, the right nutrition, it can perform its own miracles. Not only that, not only can it heal itself, it can regulate itself, it can regulate its own pH and hormones and neurotransmitters and all this stuff. It doesn't need pharmaceutical help or intervention via surgery or anything. So a lot of people don't know that actually if they have a chronic problem, especially from heartburn to cancer to arthritis, anything you name it, going to a medical doctor really is not going to help you. The wheelhouse of a medical doctor is trauma, right? If you get hit by a car or shot by a bullet, they're the ones to go to. Or if you have an infectious disease, this is where they shine. Infectious diseases and trauma. Everything else that anybody else suffers with, whether it's a blood sugar problem, a blood pressure problem, random pain that you can't explain, chances are your doctor can't explain it either. Because the only things in their wheelhouses are tests. You go in, you get a test, you get drugs, you get surgery. That's it. And if they don't have a drug or a surgery right away and the test shows up ambiguous, they're going to send you for another test. In the best case scenario, they're going to say, I don't really know, come back if it gets worse, right? And this happens quite commonly. They can't figure it out, we'll just wait till it gets worse, and or wait till your symptom becomes clinical, and then we can actually treat it with a drug or a surgery. And it's quite profound to realize that, actually. The profound statement earlier was that every animal and every human being that dies of natural causes actually dies of a nutritional deficiency. The other profound statement is that the people that we've put in charge of our health actually don't know how to help our health. They know how to fix us if we get hit by a car, and they know how to kill a bug if we get a bug, and that's it. And there's very dramatic consequences to going to people who don't know how to fix heartburn and allowing them to treat us with tests, drugs, and surgery. It's basically ruined our health, because all the problems that people suffer with are over in this category. It's either a nutritional problem, or there's some natural medicine that can address the issue, or it's an energy problem. And we're going to get into these things. And I did want to mention the mind-body-soul connection here as well, because it's kind of the opposite of the reductionist model. Reductionist is looking at a problem and tracing it down to its smallest part, which doesn't make sense, right, to us. They give you a drug for your heart and a drug for your blood pressure and a drug for your brain. Meanwhile, we recognize that this is all part of one system, a holistic system, right? And at the bottom line, all disease does happen at the cell, but we don't treat the cell. We treat the human being, and the body can deal with its own cells. So, and this is where the confusion lies, right? We don't have good information. And we just talked about Dr. Wallach's data set, and it's a stupendous data set, and it still won't tell everything, right? Experience is going to have to fill in the gaps for what research can't tell us, and why research sucks, basically, and why it's actually gotten worse in recent years than it used to be back in the 60s and 70s before we had animal ethics boards and this kind of stuff. You can't do research on a jellyfish without ethics approval now, and basically millions of dollars to do it up to code. But we don't have the information out there in the wider world. Why? Because we don't have adequate control groups, especially with human data. This is one of the biggest problems, and this is why there's so much confusing data on cancer treatments. You hear that this is good for cancer, no, this isn't, eggs is good, eggs are bad, completely opposite. Because the data is junk. It's because there's no control groups. And it's because we can't study human beings because there is no control groups. When we look for a control group in animals, we're taking a group of mice, for instance, that have all been bred to be basically the exact same. They've all been given the same nutrition. They're all born perfectly. And this is another profound statement. In the animal industries, whether it's laboratory animals, pets, livestock, zoo animals, we expect perfect births. Perfect is normal in the animal industry. Right? If you have 30 cows, we expect 30 calves that are perfect. They have no birth defects, they have no blood sugar problems, they're not autistic, or they're just born and they're fine. Right? And so when we have when we have animal research, we do have control groups because we control exactly what they eat. They're not out there drinking Pepsi. They're not taking proton pump inhibitors, right? And with human beings, we have no idea. Us in this room, we have all had completely different nutritional upbringings, and we all have completely different habits. And if we were to study, say, the impact on meat, you know, people raise their hand whether they eat meat or not, and then we take that data and say, okay, these people are more likely to have cardiovascular issues. This is why you get such small effects, right, and such confusing effects, because there's too many variables, and the variables are controlled only in a control group and not in human beings. And if anybody has any questions about any of this stuff, go ahead and save them. We'll go through Q&A when this is done. And just a short presentation explaining some basic stuff. The limited scope, this mostly has to do with money as well, but realistically, good research comes from life to death, right? So people ask, you know, what are the results of Dr. Wallach's programs? We can't actually tabulate the results until we're all dead, until enough of us have lived and died through the program. And realistically, it couldn't be judged adequately unless people were born on the program and then you follow them through their entire lives. And obviously that's going to be longer than the life of a researcher. So it's not even possible really to do it with humans. And this is why it's good to do it with animals, because a mouse lives 1.5 years, 2 years, and you can collect all that data in 2 years' time. You know when your project's done. But the limited scope is both in terms of quantity, the amount of beings, of humans or animals that you're studying, and the duration of time that we're studying them for. And if you look closely at a lot of studies now, and you see this, you know, GMO causes these rats to do this, look at the scope and look at these things and you realize this is why the data is junk. So, we do know what works, and it's actually very, very simple. And we know it works because we've done it in animals, by the way, right? Every disease that anybody can name in this room or in the Instagram land, every disease that you can name, we've eliminated in animals. 10 times that many more. We've eliminated all birth defects in animals and all of the common things that we deal with. And one of the reasons is because the animals don't really eat these bad foods. Well, some of them do. They have 4 stomachs and they can digest them. So this is the easiest thing, and I like to start here because basically more than half of what we have to offer is completely free for people. And if they did just this, if they did just the free stuff, they're going to change their lives. And a lot of people do. A lot of people just take some of this and their main problem goes away, especially if their main problem is a digestive problem. So these foods, if you get rid of these in your life, it's immediately going to, well, it will immediately start to improve your quality of life, and it will dramatically increase the length of your life if you do it with discipline. The first on the list is gluten. And the big bad boys in that is wheat, barley, rye, and oats, even if they're gluten-free oats. We don't need to go into too much detail here, but if you take a mental note or a real note of these, this will change your life. Right? And this is, we said that all disease and death is caused by a nutrient deficiency. Well, these can exacerbate this. The gluten inflames the intestines and damages the intestines, both inflames and damages the intestines. The intestines are where nutrients are absorbed. So if you have inflammation in your intestine, everybody's heard of inflammation, right? But it doesn't make sense until we realize where does this inflammation come from? It comes from these things. And so inflammation in the intestine prevents the big nutrients from being absorbed, especially the good fats, cholesterol, omegas, fat-soluble vitamins, and some other ones as well. Oil and deep-fried food. The world doesn't know about oil. In fact, if you go into a healthy restaurant, it's going to have oil in everything. If you go to a vegan restaurant, I can't even eat there because they have oil in every single thing on the menu. I'd say, I'll have a coffee, please. Right? Deep-fried, everybody knows intuitively that deep-fried food is bad. The reason is because it's oxidized oil. Oxidation is the way that things break down in nature. There's oil in every tissue in nature. It's protected from oxidation by the living shell, or peel, or skin. The moment we puncture that skin, it starts to oxidize. When we put it into a bottle of liquid oil, especially if it was extracted using chemicals and heat, it's all oxidized. It's the same as deep-fried food. By the way, interesting thought experiment. You take a cigarette and you smoke it under a fume hood, and you collect all the smoke, and you press it down and you weigh it. It weighs almost nothing. 0.0000001 grams. You take one French fry and weigh it, it outweighs several cartons worth of cigarette smoke. So you can do the math on that, and that's why over 90% of the people with lung cancer never smoked in their life. Right? This is oil and this is deep-fried food, stir-fried food, anything, heated oil, oxidized oil. We tell people it's safe to consume oil if they press it themselves cold and consume it within 24 hours. Other than that, it's going to come with too much free radical damage. You couldn't possibly supplement your way out of it. Remember, the free radical damage, free oxygen radical, it's important to understand this. This is the reason we take antioxidants, to combat free radical damage, to neutralize free radicals in the body. And free radicals are We create free radicals when we digest, we produce free radicals when we exercise, we breathe them in all over the place. This is a natural consequence of being alive. You can't avoid free radical damage completely. What you can do is minimize it, especially by not consuming oil and fried food, and by consuming lots of antioxidants. And that's one of the keys to longevity, by the way. All the longest lived populations, one of the factors that they have in common is they get an extremely high antioxidant count in their natural lifestyle. These other big bad boys on the list, these are there for promoting cancer as well. Processed meats with nitrates and nitrites, it's any deli meats, hams, and anything like that, you name it. You can look on the label, see if it has nitrates in it. If it's nitrite or nitrate free, and it says it's enriched with celery or something like that, I would also stay away from it, because when you heat celery, it acts very similar to nitrate. And the well-done red meat is on here as well. There's a very large study called the Harvard Nurses Health Study, which determined that there's a 462% difference in certain cancers development between women who ate their meat well done and medium rare. So I'm going to repeat that. The difference in that one major study, the Harvard Nurses Health Study, between women who ate their meat medium rare, red meat, and well done was 462%. So if they ate their meat well done, they had a 462% higher chance of getting certain cancers. It's an extreme difference, and this is because carcinogenic things are produced in well done red meat, not in stews. It has to be high temperature. This also goes for any burnt animal fat or anything charred. You burn your broccoli, it's bad for you. It's the black part that's bad for you. Next is carbonated drinks, and you notice these 4 things, these are in bold. If you stop these 4 things, your life will change. Now carbonated drinks, both Dr. Wallach and Dr. Glidden, Dr. Wallach's other protege, they're going to be generous and say that you can consume carbonated drinks within a 1-hour window of your food. It means that don't consume carbonated drinks 1 hour before or after you eat or supplement, because it's going to get in the way of the digestion and the absorption, because carbonation lowers stomach acid. You need strong stomach acid to digest food and to absorb nutrients. So if you stop carbonated drinks altogether, you don't have to worry about it. If you drink something like cola, it's going to be even worse, but just in general, we'd say stay away from the carbonated drinks. You can extend this list to soy and corn, especially GMOs, peanuts if they're not salted and roasted, any packaged and processed food, and obviously sugar is a big bad boy. We're not supposed to consume that much sugar, and keep in mind, we need nutrients to process sugar, so when we now eat 300 or more times the amount of sugar we did 100 years ago, now we need 300 times that nutrient to process that. So it just it exacerbates the problem when we don't need to process sugar. So stopping the bad foods is the first free thing that anybody can do to improve their life. Next, they can eat less. And I'd like to kind of go through this quickly because I want to give you a lot of information, and maybe it was only one of these things that you were missing. There's a lot of people who are supplementing, are avoiding the bad foods or whatever, and they need some other piece to maximize their recovery. For instance, if they're not sleeping well, it doesn't matter if you supplement with everything you need. It doesn't matter if you're not eating the bad foods. If you're not sleeping, you're not healing, you're never going to be perfectly healthy, right? Your body's never going to optimize. So eating less is one important strategy. All the longest lived populations in the world practice calorie restriction, mostly by default because they're poor and they don't have access to a lot of calories. But living on a reduced calorie diet is absolutely essential for maximum genetic expression and maximum longevity. Less food, more nutrients. And this also, it puts less stress on the system, right? You need nutrients to digest food. You need energy to digest food, right? This causes damage, free radical damage in the process of digestion, so the less food, the better. And for the most part, actually, people think they're hungry and they're not hungry. They're thirsty for water. They're hungry for salt. Their body's hungry for salt and they don't need it. So the first 2 immediate things that people can do to reduce the amount of food that they eat is increase the water and increase the salt, especially salt in the water. And then usually they're starving for minerals and nutrients, and we think that that's how we get it through food. We've never taught the body to get it from its more natural sources. And when you feed your body raw nutrients, it doesn't need as much food. It's very hard to get the appetite up actually that much. We went to a buffet last night and I don't think we really ate that much. We couldn't even if we tried. So you can eat better, of course. You can stop the bad foods and you can still be left over eating junk, right? This is only a wheat, barley, rye, oats, oil, deep fried food. There's still a lot left after that. But you can choose better foods. You can choose organic foods. You can choose leafy greens instead of rice. It's going to probably do you better, right? Rice isn't bad, but the leafy greens are going to be better. So drinking more water is extremely, extremely important. Most people don't drink enough water. Half a gallon to a gallon per day per human being, per adult human being. Could be even more than that, depending on your state of health. If you drink coffee, if you drink alcohol, you need more water, right? Each bit of coffee you drink dehydrates you. You need more water and you need more salt at that point, and you need more vitamins too, especially the B vitamins. Sleeping well is extremely important. This day and age, it seems almost everybody sleeps with their cell phone in their room, right? And this is on the list because we want to help people get better. And if you buy the supplements off us and you stop the bad foods and you're not sleeping, you're not going to get a result. We want you to get a result. And I know many people like this actually. Sleep prevented them from getting a good result. So we have to go through and say, get the phone out of the room, get your husband's phone out of your room, switch to an old school alarm clock with a red light, flip it against the wall so you don't see the light. You know, eliminate any extra light sources. Some people are really sensitive. And of course, insomnia at its root level is a mineral deficiency. So filling that in and making sure you're absorbing it with having a strong stomach acid, basically. Again, I know this can all conflate together, especially if you haven't heard it, so feel free to ask me to clarify it in the end. Now, belief is extremely important here in terms of what works. In the healing world, there's so much information about faith, about belief, and about the placebo effect. And there's a lot of people out there who will prevent themselves from getting true recovery because they don't want it. They don't want to believe that it's going to actually work. It's called the nocebo effect. And if you think that something's not going to help you, it's not going to help you, right? And some people will even outright deny results. You'd be like, Joe, you're walking better. No. Seriously. So you got to believe, you got to have faith, you got to believe that the body can heal itself, right? That we have this inborn ability to heal ourselves. The body can take care of itself. The body grew itself all by itself. It did not need help or instruction from a doctor or anybody. Your mama didn't need to do it, right? This is the magic of the body. And working with that placebo effect is extremely important, right? We want to, if you believe that what you're doing is helpful, you will get a better result from it. And there's just incredible testimonials of people just praying or fasting their way out of cancer, right? This is like walking away from the hospital bed. Belief, placebo. What else works is relaxing. Your body cannot heal if it's not relaxed. If you're in a serious condition, we recommend taking time off work, getting massages, hot baths, showers, anything that you can do to actually relax. It's extremely important. This literally activates the healing mechanism in the body. And a lot of people can just stop themselves from healing just by being stressed out, not giving their body time, space, heat, right? Mindfulness is extremely important. Working with it, again, you can't just fall off the stump and you find all the nutrients you need, right? You can't just walk around and eat whatever's out there. You have to be conscious of this. Next is movement. We don't move enough in the society. Very simple things we can do to increase our movements, and we can even use machines to do it, to force our circulation to move, force our lymphatic system to move without massive exercise. The longest lived populations in the world do not go to the gym, right? They do not jog, they don't go out of their way to burn calories, ever. In fact, most of the longest lived people in their interviews in their old age say that napping and taking it easy, these are really important things to them. They all work, right? Especially all the longest lived populations are peasants. They all work. Work is important, movement's important, but they're not going out of their way to sweat. When you sweat, you lose nutrients. I do believe in the camp of people that believe that you have a limited amount of heartbeats. You don't need to race through them. Your heart works all day, every day, your entire life. It doesn't need exercise, it gets exercise. You don't need to go out of your way to stress it. And muscle exercises, by the way, it does very little for the lymphatic system. And cardio, it's a complete myth that the cardiovascular system needs exercise at all. Or that it has anything to do with weight loss, for another matter. So the movement that we do recommend is low impact and low intensity. Running is high impact, swimming is low impact, right? Low intensity means, you're not increasing your heart rate too much. There's no value in increasing your heart rate that much. This is what to buy. The 90 essential nutrients are not in the food supply in their full amounts. I should have put a breakdown here, but 2/3 of that 90, 60 of them are minerals. Minerals are not distributed evenly around the crust of the earth. They're found in veins like the chocolate and the chocolate ripple ice cream, or like gold. You find gold mines scattered sporadically because they're searching for veins, because gold is not spread everywhere. Now each one of those 60 essential minerals is spread almost completely randomly. You can look at the maps of their distribution, but we also know it doesn't matter where you are, especially in America, all of the soils are being steadily depleted, and it only makes sense. Minerals don't fall out of the sky from rain, right? When you grow plants in the ground, they suck the minerals up out of the ground, and whatever you do with those plants, unless you put them right back in the ground, minerals are gone. We're exporting the minerals. So we had to move west right? So I turned into a dust bowl as we move west, because it only takes a few seasons to really screw your soil up. Now we prevent that with nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. That's 3 elements, and we need 87 more, right? So that 60 missing from our food supply, that's the most critical part. Most of the diseases that we're going to talk about, or that anybody brings up in a question, it's going to be a mineral deficiency disease, right? There's a disease associated with every single essential nutrient. That's why it's called essential, by the way. It's an essential nutrient. If you get a disease without it, then you can't make it in your body, right? It's a very simple definition. The vitamins, the amino acids, and the essential fatty acids, plants can make those things. Animals can make those things. These are carbon compounds, vitamins, amino acids, essential fatty acids. That adds up to 30 of the 90. So theoretically, we can get 30 of the 90 from the food supply. It's much more efficient, and it's much more effective to supplement with it, especially the concentrated versions of it. So that needs to be purchased. You can purchase additional support in the form of herbal tinctures or natural medicines. Now remember, there's a difference between nutrition and medicine. Big difference. A lot of people don't understand this. We ask people who come to us, are you taking any supplements or herbs or anything? Most people are taking medicines, plant medicines, and they're not actually taking nutrition. They think that it's nourishing them, and it's not. Every plant has medicinal benefits somehow. We can extract it somehow. Every plant has compounds in it that can benefit us. We can put some use to it. Some of them is almost close to a poison, but we can still use it for something useful. And that can be included in the additional support. Again, we keep animals healthy, not with medicine, with nutrition, right? But the cow doesn't come to us, again, with the soda habit and the proton pump inhibitor habit and the cheeseburger habit, right? They come to us and there's just one nutrient missing from an animal or something like that. It's super easy to fix. They don't need additional support. Human beings need some help, basically. Water filter is something that I believe everybody should buy. It's one of the easiest things that can improve your life. And unless you're going to be living off of water bottles, you can do the math, and probably less than 1 year's worth of water bottles is what your cost of your filter is going to be. And that it's extremely important. We're mostly water, right? These nutrients are delivered via a water system, and this water system is deeply connected to our entire being and our energy system. And so drinking clean water is extremely important. Not only that, but the stuff in the tap water, especially the chlorine. People are worried about the fluoride. The chlorine is going to be ruining our gut bacteria, and it's not good. We need that gut bacteria to help digest food and to absorb a lot of nutrients and use them in the body. Detox is another thing that people could buy on top of additional support and detox the body. Again, the cow doesn't come to us, eat cheeseburgers and soda and drugs and all this kind of stuff, and we have a lot more toxicity to deal with, and we need to get it out. So stress is one of the biggest contributors. I'm going to go through each one of these categories because we talked, and Dr. Wallach talks just a lot about the nutrition and the toxicity, and that's great. Now, us as practitioners, we have to walk people through, we have to hold their hands sometimes for years as they're on the road to recovery. And these stresses are going to get in the way of their recovery if they let them. So we've got psychosocial stress, that's you and your mind and your social environment. You've got nutrition and toxicity, you can control that quite easily. And then you've got environment, which is not so easy to control. The psychosocial stress, this is your mindset. We talked about placebo and belief and all this kind of stuff. You have to be actively engaged in healing. You have to commit to it. This is all mental, this is all mindset. You wouldn't believe how many people I've seen prevent themselves from even taking the supplements, even opening the box, or going gluten-free or whatever. It's because their mindset wasn't correct. Right? So getting your mindset is probably step one, and no matter what you're going to do in life. But if you're going to heal, set your mindset up. So your upbringing can matter to this, your therapy can matter. You could have all kinds of diseases of attitude here that are getting in your way, right? You can have work stresses, school stresses, you can definitely have money stresses, that's a huge one. You can have family and relationship stresses. And I put health problems on here actually, not for the health problem itself, but for the stress associated with the health problem. In Buddhism, they talk about the second arrow. The first arrow is getting hit with an arrow, the second arrow is stressing about it. Right? The first arrow is getting a diagnosis of diabetes, the second one is, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to take time off work, and the stress about it, right? So we can limit a lot of the pain that we go through in life by limiting our psychological response to our health. And one of these is by going back to the start, setting the mindset, taking control of your health. If you're in control of your health, you have a lot less to stress about. And if you don't know what's causing your cancer, your diabetes, or your teeth falling out, or whatever the problem is, it can cause quite a lot of stress. So this is just a starting point for, again, some people who think they're doing everything right, and meanwhile they're not. Their mindset isn't correct. They're stressing out about the relationship. Maybe they're they're broke and their mindset's not right on getting more money to get the things that they need, and they're stressed because they don't have the things that they need, and that's causing family stress and relationship stress, right? Get a hold of this. Nutrition, toxicity stress. This is the easy part. Lack of nutrients causes stress on the body. We need nutrients to work correctly. If, for instance, the body's low on calcium, the body's going to pull calcium from the bones and from the teeth to keep it in the blood. This is an unnecessary stress on the body. The body does not need to be playing musical chairs with its nutrients. Bad foods, obviously, a ridiculous amount of stress. We just talked about the glutens and the oils and the fried foods. Anything processed, this is causing stress on the body. It doesn't need it. This is preventing healing. Now it has to divert energy, resources, nutrients to dealing with the damage from that bad food. Too much food, loading up the system, costing too much energy. It's hard to digest food through an intestine that's full of food, right? It's supposed to get absorbed through these little finger-like things called villi. The inside of the intestine looks like an inverted shag carpet. If it's all full up of food and there's nutrients in the middle of that pile, it's going to have a hard time actually getting into the intestine, right? So we can be eating a whole bunch of nutrients that have zero chance of getting into the blood because we're too full of food, right? And we have a store out in Windsor across the river, and we love selling something called diatomaceous earth. And you probably heard of bentonite clay and some of these other things that can clean out the intestine. You wouldn't believe how many people come back to us the next day and say, I lost 10 pounds, right? I lost 15 pounds, and that was sitting inside of them, and that was preventing things from being absorbed and obviously causing a lot of pressure on the body that it doesn't need. Next is chemicals and products. A lot of us are putting some super toxic stuff on our bodies, on our hair, in our mouths, for no reason, right? These are marketed as cleaning products, and we got to learn to read labels and get these out of our world because it is contributing a lot more stress on our body than we need. And by the way, this is more, all of this together is an optimal strategy. If you utilize all of these things, you can reach your maximum potential wherever you're at now. Any one of these things will improve your life. And we focus mostly on the nutrients because that's the thing that you can't buy at the grocery store, right? This is the thing that you're fundamentally missing that creates a disease. Very rarely will a cleaning product create a disease, but it will contribute to it, especially a hormone problem or something like that. Same with too much food, right? It's not going to be causing a disease itself, but it's going to be getting in the way from maximum healing. Environmental stress is stuff you can't really control on this side. You can't control the weather, you can't control the traffic, you can't control tragedies that happen to all of us. What you can do is, work on your psychological response to this. But here in this category, I wanted to put this on because I find it's very, very important. This is electromagnetic frequencies, this is radiation. This is a stress that we are all exposed to that did not used to exist. And in that store in Windsor, this is when I first started to learn about it because I was invited there to help open it. And he sold radiation products, anti-radiation products. And I had no idea the types of testimonials that are available when you just remove the radiation stress from somebody. And we've been called liars because we have videos of people getting out of wheelchairs. We have people walking out with crutches on their backs who walked in with crutches. And we have like crazy things. People with Parkinson's and they stop, right there on camera from taking away the radiation stress. And the reason this is because, and live blood analysis is the best way to demonstrate this, that when the body or when the blood is under radiation stress, the blood vessels crinkle up and the blood vessels clump together, or the blood vessels are affected somehow, and the blood vessels are what carry those nutrients around, they would carry oxygen around, they would remove waste from the cells. So this is the highway system, and it's fundamentally compromised by the radiation around us. Most people in this room probably have a phone less than a foot away from them. That is going to be the single biggest stressor in your life. If you sleep next to that, it's going to prevent you from healing on a very deep level. There are technologies to get rid of this, not completely. This is why this needs to be addressed on an actual deeper level. That's why I put participate down here. Because if we're aware of this, we need to actually address this in our society. Because it's not just your phone, it's your neighbor's Wi-Fi, it's the cell phone towers everywhere. It's the high voltage power lines. This is the way that our environment has been wired up, and we have not been paying attention to this, and this is a huge stressor. And this is why, in my own world, we address both. We address the nutritional deficiencies, we address the bad foods, and we address the radiation exposure. And I've seen too many people do the nutrition, still be in their bad health. Address the radiation, fixes them, right? Or allows their body to do it because now the blood can move around properly. And that's just one of the things that the radiation can stress is the blood. But it's the most important system. So minimizing exposure is number one thing that anybody can do. Take the phone out of your pocket, never keep it in your pocket. I had mine in my pocket earlier. I also had a silver slip in there, so it sat against it. It's one of the things I can do to reduce my exposure, but very generally it's not on my body ever, right? And we run a business on the phone, it's tough to keep it out of the hands. There's devices on the phone, it's still not enough. Reducing the exposure as much as humanly possible and within your own life and your business. Same thing with your Wi-Fi router. You can cage it, by the way, put shields on here because some things can be shielded. You could buy anti-radiation paint. You could put a Faraday cage around your Wi-Fi router. Most Wi-Fi routers pump out much more energy than they need to. Obviously, that's not going to change what your neighbor does when you share a wall with, but it's your immediate environment. So you can reduce the exposure from many things by shielding and just by staying away from them. Right? Some people, I also run another Instagram account that's about cell phone towers, and some people message me and say, there's a cell phone tower right next to my house. What do I do? Move is my answer. And you have to. Right? This is being serious. You can't shield that much radiation. Minimize exposure, sometimes we gotta move. Sucks. Bearer of bad news, I know, but this is the way our world is, and we've gotta be serious about it. And if people wanna know how they're gonna heal with a cell phone tower next to them, the answer is you're not going to. So there are energy devices, there are anti-radiation devices. We're not really gonna go into deal with that. That's a huge wide world, but once you start to crack open that jar, you can find out for yourself that there are many, many things that can actually override a lot of the stress in the radiation, and we get phenomenal results by doing this using devices, because it's the easiest thing to do. I can teach you how to reduce exposure. You're not going to see a result from that for quite a while. One of the main results is you'll probably become more sensitive to it, and which will allow you to consciously avoid it. If you can feel it without your eyes, without knowing, you can avoid it. You can avoid the panel, the power panel, or whatever it is that's your biggest source of exposure. It could be fluorescent lights, by the way. Structured water is one of the things that really comes into play here. Your body's mostly made of water. Your body's meant to accept water at a certain frequency. We're talking energy here, right? A lot of people have heard that radiation, or the microwave radiation, can destroy certain nutrients in food. Well, it also basically destroys the structure of it. And our cells are meant to accept water at a certain structure. And we see phenomenal results actually by using structured water. Before supplements, this is again in the category of things where people could be supplementing, avoiding the bad foods, failing to get the result. Why? Add structured water in, changes their life. Now their body those nutrients are delivered via water, right? The blood vessels, this is made of water, right? This whole thing is a water system. So if your water system is compromised, you're compromised no matter what, right? If your water system is compromised, it's not delivering the nutrients to you correctly. So shields and participate in the broader thing. You can't just ignore this problem. Radiation is a problem. We need to do something about it. And this is, for my world and the generations following us, we can't just continue on 5G and 8G, and it actually will kill us. It's truly. Not all at once, like, we just drop dead. It's just like, it's compromising our ability to be healthy, really. So, what to be here, and this is kind of the end of it, I believe, actually. What to be here is to be serious, right? You can't do this without being serious. And people come to us with serious health problems, and they want to get out of it without being serious. It doesn't make sense. You can't just go to the grocery store again and eat whatever you want. You can't find the nutrients in the food. You have to go out of your way. Not only that, Dr. Wallach has designed some incredible products. You still need to find what's best for you. You still need to find your own dose. We have starter packs, we have protocols, but it's still up to you to figure out what actually does work best for you. And times and doses and all this kind of stuff. Budget, whatever it is. You got to be committed to it, because very few miracles happen overnight. My miraculous cure happened in 6 days flat, but it didn't just happen in 6 days flat. There were things leading up to that. I did avoid the bad foods up to that. I was on some products before that. And when I got my right product, I got my miracle. But it was because I was committed. It's the only reason I'm still here. Right? I was doing it wrong for over a year before I actually did it. And there's many, many people who, again, they buy all the right stuff, they go gluten-free for 2 weeks and they quit. Right? Serious recovery is going to take 90 days or longer. So having that in your head, knowing that's what's going to allow you to actually do it, right? If you think you're going to get a miracle tomorrow, you're going to be disappointed, no matter what, even with the best products in the world, right? You go gluten-free today, you're not going to feel the effects for a month, 2 weeks, a month, 3 months, right? Especially the older you are, the more damage there is, the longer you've got to give your body to actually heal. And chances are, the more doses you've got to give your body to heal too. Your body needs more nutrients to heal than it does to maintain. So the next is to be involved. And this is, again, in the broader world. People don't know this, right? We have hospitals all over the place. They're all medical doctor hospitals. They're all allopathic hospitals. We're sending our friends and our grandmas and our children there, and they can't help us. And nobody knows this, right? Before Dr. Wallach, did any of you know that everybody and every animal that dies of a natural cause actually dies of a nutritional deficiency? We were never taught that, right? We were never taught what to eat. These are all theories. They change the plate up every year. And we don't know. It feels like we're all just guessing. So what we need to do is we actually need to save the world. This is because everybody is actually walking around with nutrient deficiencies, and everybody's walking around with health problems. And it literally is only a matter of time. It doesn't matter how old they are or anything. This is going to catch up with them. So we need to be involved in this in a much wider scope. We can't keep this information to ourselves, and that's why I'm here today. I had no interest in ever being a health practitioner or a public speaker or anything like that. This is our world here, right? And once you know this information, you have a moral obligation to spread it, and this has to be implemented in the political system here in America. By the way, this is in closing because this is my last slide. This medical system is actually bankrupting our society. Not only is it preventing us from being healthy, but you're here in Detroit. This is a very good illustration of what has happened because of health insurance. Why is there no jobs in Detroit? Why is there no jobs in Gary, Indiana, and Cleveland, Ohio? Because American employers have to pay health insurance for their employees. And in America, you have the worst health in the world, and you pay the most for health care. Out of actually all the other countries in the world combined, you pay more health care. So that's the reason why there's no jobs here, because NAFTA came in and gave businesses tax benefits to ship their jobs to countries that pay for their own health insurance, right? We in Canada are the biggest exporter of American goods. We export the most to America. We have nothing special in Canada that America has, except Canada pays the health insurance. GM doesn't need to pay the health insurance for a Canadian employer. And pay them the same amount, don't need to pay them the health insurance. So it's bankrupting your society, it's bankrupting our country as well, because it's free, right? We think it's free, but we paid those taxes. So the entire tax system just being shoveled into this medical system that not only can't help us, but actually hurts us, right? If we go to a doctor for help with heartburn, and they give you a proton pump inhibitor, they're hurting you, right? You're worse off than you were if you did not go to them in the first place. And the manufacture and distribution and marketing of that drug costs money as well. It ultimately comes from the taxpayer because they're the ones that the insurance pays. So that gets a little deep there, but this is actually when it comes into changing and saving our world, both physically and economically, we have to be involved in a broader scope. So that's the gist of this presentation, and I want to leave it up to Q&A here, and if you guys have questions, it's phenomenal. I want to focus on you guys. We've probably got some people on here on the Instagram as well, and probably some questions that we can fish out of there as well. So that's it for now, and I invite any questions now. First. Yep.
I'm, let me see, like, as far as with cancer, I've read where in Israel, and I'm very interested in the intravenous of vitamin C,
Yep.
which they prove that it does. All right, I take 1,000 milligrams of liquid vitamin C every day, but I'm thinking, and I know because I do cannabis,
Okay.
and I've done research on that, and I use it as a suppositories because then I don't get any of the head effects.
Okay.
And I am just wondering, because it gets into your bloodstream so much faster, and a lot of the other nutrients that you have to take orally. But I'm just wondering, as far as making a suppository of liquid vitamin C, and am I able to get like vitamin C? It would be like a shelf life or something like that.
Well,
I talked to Beth about it, and she said that she does have, I mean, you did say you had liquid vitamin C.
Not liquid, so we have liquid minerals and liquid all-in-one vitamins. That helps the kidney down.
Oh, okay.
so vitamin C is one of the 16 essential vitamins, and it's one of the 90 essential nutrients. It's a very important one. It's an antioxidant, it's a cofactor for many things. It's involved in connective tissue, it's involved in immune system. And you're talking about intravenous. Intravenous, it means 100% absorbable. It means you don't have to digest it, you don't have to absorb it. All that stuff we're talking about with the gluten, well, if you injected all your nutrients, you don't need to worry about that. You don't need intestines if you just inject it right into the bloodstream. Remember, the body takes the food or whatever, breaks it down, and is meant to extract that nutrient and absorb it into the intestine, into the blood. But you can skip that by putting it straight into the blood, and many people do. It's quite expensive to do intravenous nutrition, but you can do it.
They do it in Ohio, and doctors will do it, and I understand this, quite expensive, but I thought, well, with my 1,000 every day, I'm getting some, into my system.
You absolutely are getting some into your system, and we do have liquid nutrients with all the nutrients in it, right? And we just, even though intravenous is very effective in the sense that it's 100% absorbable, it's not something that I can recommend for everybody. If you do have cancer, maybe you do want to do that, but honestly, if you start at the basics of avoiding all the bad foods with 100% discipline, because you're in a serious health condition, you avoid all the bad foods, you take all the nutrients and you increase the specific ones. Vitamin C would be one of them, by the way, but vitamin C actually increases your need for other nutrients. We talk about the 90 essential nutrients because they all work together in a proportion. So if you take a whole bunch of one nutrient, it's going to increase your need for other nutrients. And actually, the vitamin C will increase your need for certain minerals, which arguably to me would be more important than focusing just on vitamin C. So you do want to take all 90 essential nutrients. The ones that I would boost on top of that first would be selenium, right? And by the way, the selenium cofactor, that's the one that you actually need more of if you take a whole bunch of vitamin C. So taking more vitamin C actually reduces the amount of that you have, that mineral that you have. And that selenium, by the way, is what allows our body to utilize glutathione. If you go to glutathione, it's an antioxidant that we produce in our body. In pretty much every cell in our body, it's the master antioxidant. Our bodies can't utilize glutathione effectively without selenium or without vitamin C because it's a cofactor. They're all cofactors. That's why we say the 90 essential nutrients, and we don't want to put too much emphasis on any one specific nutrient. And as far as suppository goes, we don't need to. In our business of helping people, we don't ever need to go there. Again, we say that you can do suppository, you do intravenous, but you don't need to. You need to avoid the bad foods, you need to take the 90 essential nutrients to your body weight and increase the ones that are more important. After selenium, I would increase antioxidants. You could do that in supplements very cheaply, very effectively. And you could also go out of your way to eat foods that are high in antioxidant. And those are the first steps. The other things that are going to be involved in cancer pretty much every time, going to be a digestive problem. This is, by the way, miracles of fasting, right? There's so many stories of people just fasting, just stopping eating food and getting out of a chronic disease, taking the stress off of their body, and that will allow itself. Even Denny's closes once a year, right? You gotta clean the kitchen out, you gotta clean the system out. A lot of people never do this. They never go 8 hours or 10 hours or 12 hours without eating. But this is one of the easiest, fastest things that you can do to kickstart healing is fasting. Getting rid of bad foods, fasting. And correcting any underlying digestive problem. I didn't get to talk about salt much here, which is surprising based on how much we talk about salt on the internet. Most people come to us and they got a salt problem. They don't have a vitamin C problem. They have a salt problem, probably a salt deficiency. So increasing the amount of salt immediately. And we instruct people to do a salt flush, by the way, which is basically pouring a glass of salt water and sipping on it until it's offensively salty. And if you're low on salt, it will actually taste phenomenal. And then it'll get progressively saltier and saltier each sip until at one moment it's like you're drinking the ocean, right? And when it gets to that point, the point that, and I recommend doing this, I recommend everybody do this. When it gets to the point where if it were food placed in front of you, you couldn't eat it, even if you were polite, right? That's when you've had enough, you're now topped up. Why salt? Because your body makes stomach acid out of salt. Sodium chloride, hydrogen chloride. You need a strong stomach acid to break down food and to absorb minerals. Those minerals, not necessarily the ones that we were just talking about, but many of them need to be activated by a strong stomach acid. If you take minerals, you take a calcium supplement, for instance, and you drop it into a stomach that's not acidic, it's a complete waste of money. Your body can't utilize it at all. It's not activated. Right? So having a strong stomach acid is one of the first things that you could do to improve your life. And if you have cancer, you have nutrient deficiencies, you have a toxicity problem, either by bad food or some environmental toxin, something like that can happen. Digestive problem, and then you have a circulation problem. And these all go together. Right? The nutrient deficiency can cause a digestive problem, which leads to the circulation problem. So avoid the bad foods, take the nutrients, go serious on both of these things. And for someone who's got cancer, again, we're just saying take it real serious. I would increase those things to the maximum and forget about budget even for the moment, because you don't need to take this forever. I would increase those certain nutrients. I would increase the antioxidants to the max. I would increase C greens. C greens is a miracle compound that we have. And one of the products that, Betty, have you Z-Radical here? Yes. Z-Radical contains a concentrated fucoidin, which is one of the miracle antioxidants found in sea greens. And that's one of the things that I would recommend for anybody who's dealing with any serious problem, especially anything that's labeled autoimmune. By the way, it doesn't exist, no such thing as an autoimmune disease, but anything that's labeled autoimmune, cancer or something like that. And forgive me if it sounds like it's a lot, but it's just taking the good stuff, avoiding the bad stuff, making sure your digestion is working correctly. There's only a few important strategies for that. Making sure there's no gluten, which is already in the first category. Making sure you have enough salt, possibly digestive enzymes, using digestive enzymes to allow your body to absorb certain things better, so to not make it complicated. And then for circulation, there's other things you can do as well. There's machines you can do, there's exercises you can do, you can do lymphatic massages, but even simple things like a shower. You can get in the shower and turn it on hot and cold variation, and then it'll force a lymphatic movement within your body. And you can Google lymphatic exercises, and that's one thing that I would take very seriously if I had something like cancer. Can I answer just another question about cancer for you if you have one? No?
I have a lot of medical issues, but diabetes has caused a lot of problems.
As it does, yeah.
And I'm not sure if you have anything that could help me turn it around. I know I'm not supposed to have salt, fatty foods, greasy foods, caffeinated foods. I mean, I have a long list that the doctor gave me.
It's a medical doctor, correct?
Yeah, he is an allopathic doctor.
So it's unfortunate that a medical allopathic doctor, meaning the only doctors that we really have access to out there that insurance will pay for, it's unfortunate that they don't know that we cured diabetes in animals in 1957. And that's all blood sugar problems. We cured them in animals in 1957.
Is that through insulin or?
It's nothing to do with insulin. There's two trace minerals that are involved in the insulin metabolism. When we added them to animal feed, it was eliminated. There's one major mineral and one trace mineral in there. And so we have products that are labeled blood sugar support products for legal reasons, because you're not allowed to treat, we don't treat problems, right? And we're just like, we don't treat diseases. We don't even treat humans. We support humans, right? The human body can do what it needs. So with blood sugar support, we're giving the body what it needs to have healthy blood sugar. That's, again, the exact legal terminology that you can use. There's other things that can help as well, and they're also in that same product. Having said that, eating sugar exacerbates that, right? If you need 1 unit of that mineral to digest 1 unit of sugar, and we're eating 300 times more sugar, we can't even metabolize that much of that mineral, right? So we can't eat that much sugar. Sugar is going to cause us problems regardless. Digestive problems are going to cause blood sugar problems as well. If somebody's overweight, initially this is going to be just a sign that they probably have a blood sugar problem. And this is in our regular questionnaire when we ask people. We expect these things to go together. We expect a blood sugar problem to go with a digestive problem. One causes the other, it doesn't matter which one goes first. Fundamentally, at the bottom line is a mineral deficiency. That one mineral has 23 cofactors at least. And remember, we talk about the 90 essential nutrients. That's all that we have proven for maximum genetic expression. Dr. Wallach says it could easily be the mighty 300 essential nutrients one day, if someone ever did the research to prove that this would lead us to our maximum genetic expression. But for now, we have it mapped out. There's at least 23 cofactors of that one nutrient. This is why we say the 90 essential nutrients. And in your case, you would boost those 2 nutrients with that one blood sugar support product. Avoid all the glutens 100,000%. Be super serious about that. Avoid sugar, which you probably already do. Now you said one thing, which sets us off here in another direction, because your medical doctor told you to avoid salt. We just talked about how the fact that the salt is actually the most important nutrient. If you don't have salt, your body can't use water properly, your body can't, people think they're bloated because they're taking too much salt. You're bloated because you don't have enough salt. We live in backwards land, we live in an opposite world, and the medical doctors perpetuate these opposites. They tell you not to consume salt, you need salt. If a farmer wants to be a farmer, you have to give your animals salt or your animals will die, period. Doesn't matter what else you give them, let them eat all the grass they want, they need salt or they will die. Human beings need salt or they will die. Your health is failing because of salt deficiency, probably behind all this. Guess what? You can't absorb those nutrients without salt, right? Without a strong stomach acid. You can't break down food properly without salt. We were just talking about toxicity earlier in the bad foods. A good food can become a bad food if you don't digest it, right? A good food can become a bad food if that protein isn't broken down and it gets into the intestine and it still gets into the blood. You could have an allergy from that, right? Your body can have a reaction to that. This is called dirty blood. This is where we get things like cysts and all sorts of lymphatic problems and cancer. This is why we say it's always going to be involved here. So you need to digest. That's all you need to do. You need to take the nutrients your body needs for healthy blood sugar. You need to avoid the bad foods, especially the glutens. The other ones too, because they'll kill you more long term, but the glutens are screwing up the intestines now. You need to have enough salt. And there isn't actually anything else on top of that you directly need to do. You're going to have a circulation problem because the blood sugar problem creates a circulation problem. It creates a cholesterol problem, right? Your cholesterol and triglycerides go up before you even have diabetes. nothing to do with cholesterol intake. It has to do with inflammation in the body. Right? And we'll repeat that. High cholesterol has got nothing to do with cholesterol intake. It has to do with inflammation in the body. Stop consuming the inflammatory foods, cholesterol will normalize to whatever it is. And so you will have a cholesterol problem by default because of the blood sugar, and it has zero to do with your cholesterol. In fact, I'd wager a bet to say you're probably avoiding cholesterol because the doctor told you. Right? Which is another major myth, because cholesterol is an extremely important nutrient and it would be considered essential if we couldn't make any of it. And we do make 10% or so of what we need, so it's not technically essential. Did I answer that for you? Is there any other clarification for that?
A lot of it.
It is actually that simple when it comes to blood sugar. Right? A lot of people, and sometimes Dr. Wallach can make it sound too simple. He said just take the healthy blood sugar pack and avoid the bad foods. People want more. There isn't more. It's avoiding the bad foods and taking what you need in optimal doses for your body weight. Especially if you're in a condition that you need to heal from, you need more than you do to maintain. And that's it. And then this stuff, being serious, understanding it's going to take a while, and get involved in telling the wider world about this, because for every one person like you that goes into a medical doctor with a blood sugar problem, when they leave the doctor's office, they're worse off. You have a prescription, you have an order to avoid salt, most important nutrient. It's going to start to kill them immediately once they start avoiding salt. Right? And whatever other backwards advice they give them. You mentioned some other things, like you need to stay away from caffeine. No, you don't. No one needs to stay away from caffeine. All the longest of the populations consume caffeine, to my knowledge. Most of them much more than you would think. Right? So caffeine's got nothing to do with it. What else did you say? Spicy foods, nothing to do with it?
I was going into kidney failure, and that's why he did it. And I have a lot of other medical issues. I have liver problems, I have heart problems, like a lot of other.
Let's handle all of these. Liver first, mineral deficiency.
I got a disease when I was 8 years old that almost killed me. I destroyed 90% of my liver.
I do believe you. The liver is actually a very interesting organ, because you can actually, you can regenerate it. They can actually cut the liver out, up to 75, maybe even 90% of the liver they can cut out, and it can regrow itself. It's very common for people to come to us with majorly underfunctioning liver, and it's actually just a mineral deficiency. It's actually only one mineral. And it's part of the 90 essential nutrients. It's the one that I would boost for you. Dr. Wallach doesn't like mentioning individual nutrients because he doesn't want you to go out and buy chromium for the blood sugar. He doesn't want you to go out and buy selenium for this, because they all work together. The recipe matters, the form matters, the quantity matters, all this stuff matters, so we want to handle that for you. The liver problem doesn't matter what age you're from. Remember, I was born crippled. I was born with birth defects. Lots of people are. I was born with nutrient deficiencies. It's only a matter of time, essentially. You had it when you're 8 years old. It can happen later in life, it can happen earlier in life. There's babies born with liver problems, there's babies born with kidney problems, there's babies born with cancer, diabetes too now. Obesity, obese babies, right? Obese newborns. So the liver problem is a nutrient deficiency. Kidney problem. I want to say 9 out of 10, but it's probably 99 out of 100 people that come to us with a kidney problem don't have a kidney problem. They have a vessel problem, they have a cardiovascular problem. There's a ton of little miniature microveins inside the kidney. We were talking about inflammation earlier. High cholesterol. High cholesterol means inflammation in the arteries, in the blood. Well, that's going to most affect the kidney, because the kidney has these little tiny little veins and arteries, and so any plaque buildup or any inflammation is going to hit that harder. So the same prescription, nothing changes. Avoid the inflammatory foods. That's the list of food: the oils, the fried food, gluten, processed meat, well done red meat, and taking the stuff that your body needs to heal from that. That same nutrient for your liver, selenium, one of the most important nutrients out there, because it allows our body to utilize antioxidants. Antioxidants are what we need to clean up the free radical damage. Free radical damage is what's clogging the arteries. Clogged arteries is what's causing an underfunctioning kidney. Now there's herbal support for kidneys as well, right? And all these problems, a lot of people come to us, by the way, they say, I have this problem, this problem, this problem, this problem, and we gather it all up and say, it's all in the same category, right? Or it's all in 2 categories. There's only 4 categories of disease, by the way, so it's not that complicated. Next, you go to your heart. All the heart diseases are nutrient deficiencies. All of them. Which one do you have?
It's half my heart's enlarged, and that was the birth defect.
It's an enlarged heart. Selenium deficiency, right? And it's not an accident. Usually people come to us and we keep mentioning the same nutrient over and over and over. It's because they got 25 different symptoms from the same deficiency. An enlarged heart, athlete's heart, Keyshawn disease, cardiomyopathy. This is selenium deficiency. So it's the same problem, same nutrient. And it's no wonder this nutrient's not in the food supply, right? And this is the same problem with muscular dystrophy, cystic fibrosis. You might have muscle problems as well, right? Might have memory problems, might have lots of things that can be involved in this. Any other problems?
I got a question.
Well, hold on. Does she have any other health problems to be concerned? Maybe we can group
I
it in.
have a lot of, but that's okay, answer her.
It's all going to be the same thing. Avoid the bad foods. Take all the nutrients.
No, I don't have a lot of.
I would increase the selenium quite a lot. Your turn now. Yes.
This doesn't have anything to do with humans. You were talking about that they had known in 57 how to cure diabetes in an animal, and they were lacking two things. What does the animal lack when he gets diabetes?
Chromium and vanadium.
Chromium?
And what's the other ones?
Vanadium. Please don't go run out and buy them. Interesting story. This information came out in the 60s, by the way, right? They came out and said, hey, by the way, doctors, researchers, they came out and they went public and they said, we cured diabetes in animals. And everyone said, wow, really, how'd you do it? And they said it was with chromium and vanadium. And everyone went out and bought chromium and vanadium. And they measured the blood serum levels in Americans. That they still do this. They have very good records on it, actually. And you can see the chromium and vanadium go up in people's bloods. At the same time, diabetes is going up. Why? Because there's at least 23 cofactors to chromium, right? And because what else is increasing at the same time? Junk food, sugar, right? All these other things that are exacerbating the problem. So this is holistic, right? We need to approach it from the body level. The body needs to have a clear environment, no bad foods, and then it's all the nutrients. And that's it. But in animals, again, they didn't have that. Animals didn't eat cheeseburgers, they didn't take drugs, they didn't drink alcohol. They were just missing a couple nutrients. And all we had to do was add it to them. And for almost all the nutrients, there's a story like that of how we discovered that animals need it. It's because they were missing only that one thing. So it was a very easy puzzle piece to fix. And human beings, it's not that simple. And we proved that because Americans went out and bought chromium en masse, right? They spent, I don't know how much money on it, but collectively they spent a lot of money on it, and it did zero for diabetes rates. And it won't ever fix diabetes on its own because it's part of the whole picture.
Carbonated drinks. When I hear carbonated drinks, I think of soda, Coca-Cola, Eggo. What about sparkling water? Is that okay to drink?
For its role in lowering stomach acid, it's the exact same. It doesn't matter what else it has, and it's the carbonation itself that neutralizes and lowers stomach acid. And that prevents the digestion of food and the absorption of nutrients. If it's a sugary drink, it's going to be worse because it's got sugar in it, and whatever food coloring and whatever natural flavors and stuff that they have. If it's a cola, it's going to be the worst thing you could possibly consume, food-wise. Sparkling water is just as bad, champagne is just as bad. It will screw up your digestion.
I was just diagnosed with carpal tunnel of the ankles. And I was just wondering what makes that happen and what do I do for that?
Well, carpal tunnel is a really interesting one, actually. We discovered this in turkeys. I believe this was back in, it was 1948 or 58 or something like that. I believe it was 1948 that we discovered that arsenic was an essential nutrient for every vertebrate. And this is actually, if you Google, you see your eyebrows raised, well, if you Google essential nutrients, there's a short list that everybody agrees on. And arsenic is one of them. There's nobody that's out there saying that arsenic is not essential. And it is absolutely essential in tendons, and it has a lot to do with carpal tunnel no matter where it shows up in the body. Again, don't go out and buy arsenic. And by the way, every mineral, every element can be toxic in some amounts. Calcium can kill you, salt can kill you, right? Magnesium can kill you in some amount, some form, something like that, especially if it's in salt form. Arsenic in its natural form is naturally occurring. All minerals are naturally occurring, right? So the arsenic is naturally occurring in our environment, and that's one of the major ones behind it. But it's, other than that, it's just too much bad foods, potentially, not enough nutrients. It's very simple. And for someone like you where you don't weigh that much, you know, then actually, so you don't weigh much, so you don't need much. But we find too that the worse somebody is off, and forgive me, but the older they are and stuff, they usually take better to it actually. The body sucks it up like a dry sponge sucks more water up than a wet sponge kind of thing, right? So it's actually a very simple one. There's no, you don't need a medicine, right? You don't need any particular foods to eat. You just need to avoid the inflammatory foods, which we would recommend anyways, and take the nutrients appropriate to your body weight, and that's it. And there's no arsenic product, it's found as one of the 60 essential minerals, and it's found in the spread in the products. Yep.
My question is, I recently heard if you're on something, whether it's holistic or that your body grows accustomed to it and it doesn't work as well after you take it a long while? Does that make any sense?
To me, it's actually the opposite. That products work better and better the longer you're on them because you absorb more of them. We do find that when people come in and they start taking the nutrient, we know they're not going to absorb it all right away. Their body has to actually be exposed to it for a while, especially in super high concentrations. So no, I would say the opposite is true. Your body becoming used to it, it just means that you will feel it more. You become more attuned to it almost, so your body will tell you that you need more, you know. You start taking the multivitamins and the multiminerals, you won't want to go off them. Your body will react to it. It'll say, I want that back. For me, I grew up in pain. I lived in pain for 25 years. When I took the products to cure me, if I go off of it just for a little bit, my body's telling me, get back on that now. So no, it's not that it gets less of a result, it gets more of a result from it, in my opinion. Yep.
When you said that we need salt, I'm assuming you're talking about sea salt or something. Does sea salt have sufficient minerals to rejuvenate health versus, or is it sufficient?
So I'll address the first part first. At the chemical level, even table salt will do the job, right? The body will take sodium chloride, even if it's bleached and whatever. Table salt's not good, but if you just give your body the sodium chloride in the form of table salt, it will still use the chloride part for its stomach acid. And we also need sodium. We didn't talk about sodium. Sodium potassium pumps used in transmission of nerves and all this, multiple things, but it's the chloride that your body needs. So actually, you don't even need to take salt for it. You can hack that and take another chloride compound like betaine hydrochloride or something. But salt is the best way. So you can use table salt. Natural salt is better. Does it have enough nutrients for you? No, not even close. And it shouldn't be thought of that way. Some people market their salts saying, we have a trace of all the 80 minerals in it. Tiny, 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 minuscule amounts. So it's not good for that. But natural salt is phenomenal anyways. You cannot count on getting a full spread of minerals at all. But even like we were just talking about arsenic. Arsenic is going to be found in trace amounts in the natural salts. Remember, all the minerals are present in a trace amount in seawater, for instance. So that means it's always going to be in sea salt. And in all the natural salts, there's the whole spread of trace minerals. So if you have one acute deficiency of one of those mega trace minerals, just consuming salt can help you with that. But it's not going to give you enough to really, truly alter your structure and function of your body.
Now, the product that you all have, where are things sourced from? I guess I'm assuming it would be natural.
That's a big question. So we talked about the 90 essential nutrients. There's 90 compounds there. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff too. Realistically, if you actually buy, even one of our main products has like 256 ingredients in it. So it's a big conversation of where everything is gotten from. But to focus on the minerals, where we get our minerals from, which is 2/3 of the 90 essential nutrients, it's the most important part of the nutritional puzzle. And it's the most important part of what we bring to the table, because we got to say, there's nothing particularly special about our B12, right? There's like 3 major sources of B12 in the whole world. They're big industrial factories that produce it because bacteria produce it, and they need big old steel vats to produce it and stuff like that. And there's a lot of confusion between synthetic and natural vitamins. The distinction is very ambiguous, and it doesn't mean much to us, right? Because the cow can produce B12 in its stomach, because it's got a big stomach that does it for it. We produce it in a big vat. I don't really know where the line is between natural and synthetic, and there's no fundamental chemical difference between them. So the vitamins, the 16 out of the 90, each one of them has their own story of where we get it from, right? Where we get it from and how it's actually produced in nature and how we can get around that and produce it as human beings. And this can be a very, very technical conversation. But our minerals come from a mine in Utah, and it's a mine of humic shale, which is basically ancient, it's an ancient seabed, an ancient sea forest it's on top of a mountain. And we've got 100 cubic miles of it, it's a ton of stuff. And something magic happens when a plant sucks a mineral up, whether it's in the sea or whether it's in the dirt. Also remember too, this is like, well, don't remember, we didn't talk about it before. A root needs to be in contact both with fungus and minerals. There's an interaction, a relationship between minerals in the soil, organic, inorganic minerals, whatever, rocks, dirt. The fungus allows the fungus basically pre-digests the mineral to be absorbed into the root. When it's absorbed into the root, it changes form. magic. This is nature's magic here. It becomes colloidal, ionic. You probably heard these words before. And means it becomes charged. Fundamental difference between colloidal minerals and regular minerals. If you just took a handful of dirt or sand or whatever, and you shook it up in a glass of water, it's going to be cloudy for a few minutes and then it's going to settle down. If you have a glass of, I don't know if you have any here, the plant-derived minerals, you could leave it on the table for 10,000 years, it'll never settle out. It's basically a perpetual motion machine because every little molecule in there it's opposed to every other molecule in there, so it'll just never settle out. It retains its energy, and there's nothing that we know that can actually stop that process. Once it's colloidal, period, forever. So it's very interesting. That's where ours come from. They're extremely absorbable. They're concentrated to the maximum saturation point. Means if they're any more concentrated, they burn your lips. Right? Dr. Wallach says it'll shrink wrap your lips around your face. It's so strong. It's so stringent. And so we've got it to as strong as it possibly can be without actually harming people. And that's the mineral component. Those minerals are the cofactors. Stop me on time too, Judy, if we're going over. I don't know how long I've gone, but those are the cofactors for all the other stuff too, right? Talking about vitamin C. Vitamin C's got dozens of mineral cofactors that we already have mapped out. Every nutrient is going to be like that in this spider web of interactions. And the minerals are most interesting because your body both runs off them and is made from them, right? Structure and function. Whereas your body's not made of vitamins. Your body uses vitamins to run its processes, to run its metabolism. It burns them out because they're done. It's carbon compound. But the minerals it uses in interactions, cofactors, and synapses, and all this stuff. And your body physically makes its tissue out of the minerals as well. So that's the important component. Everything else that's on the list, all the other stuff that we have, Dr. Wallach has actually kind of revolutionized certain ways of making products. So this can be an extremely complicated conversation, especially if you're not familiar with the way that supplements are traditionally made. And some words a lot of people don't even know, like chelation, right? If you don't, there's many different ways this can be done, and I don't want to go into too much detail, but I invite you to follow up with me after, and we can have that conversation as well, if it matters. But for the most part, most people just kind of want to know that there's good sources and all that kind of stuff. And this company was started by Dr. Wallach. He doesn't run it. We trust the company to actually go out of its way to give us the best that it can, to do the best that it can, basically. And when Dr. Wallach started the company, the guy he put in charge of formulating the products, his instructions were to find the best resources and put them together in the way that you can to add up this list of these things that human needs in these proportions, and we'll figure out how to sell it later, basically. We'll figure out what the price is later. Do it, figure out the cost, that's what we'll label it as, right? Whereas a lot of it's usually done the opposite way. They start out with a product and try to market later. We had to make the product and then just worry about what it costs later, right? And that's also, you could read some products that have a very similar label and not a very similar price. And the difference is beyond the label. The difference is in the quality and actually in the end results of it too, and absorbability. Any other questions?
What is structured water? That was one of the things we could do to help ourselves, and it's structured water. I just wondered what structured water is.
Well, there's many other companies out there marketing structured water. The water is not different, the structure of the water is different. Basically, it's the resonance, it's the harmony, it's the frequency that the water carries. Have any of you heard of Dr. Emoto, Messages in Water?
Yeah.
Okay, so then for the rest of you, water retains energy in a very weird way. And Dr. Emoto's work, a lot of it had to do with speaking to water and then freezing it and then taking pictures of it as it crystallized. It's extremely, extremely interesting. You could put a label with the word love on it and a label with the word hate on it. And the water, its structure under a microscope with love on it is a beautiful snowflake. And the other one is a mess. The one with hate on it is a mess. This is the structure of the water, not the water itself. It's still H2O, but it has a magic retention of the energy that's given to it. And this extrapolates on. This is why I don't like microwaves, right? I don't care that microwaves destroy the nutrition. I'm not counting on the food to have much nutrition in it. I don't care that the microwave destroys the enzymes. You produce your own enzymes. I care that it destroys the energy in it. All right, so structured water is the opposite of that. It's water with energy put into it. You probably heard of the Kangen water machine. And there's other machines that have done this, that put structure into their water. We sell structured water in bottled form, so that you don't need much of it, you only need a little capful of it. And I believe, Fred, who makes structured water, that ours is superior in a very specific way because it carries the harmony that you find at the bottom of the ocean. Basically, they went and they gathered ocean water as far down as they could go, and they match that resonance. And they embed that into the water, and this sounds crazy, I know to some people, but they embed it into the water in a way that is so stable that you can put it through an X-ray and it doesn't distort it. Right? So when you put structured water into your body, even in minuscule amounts, I'm not talking about all the water that you drink being structured, introducing structured water in, and his method is by taking a little capful, 1 teaspoon, every 30 minutes for 90 days to build your energetic resonance up. And this is beyond nutrition again, but this is something that can really have dramatic results aside from nutrition and in conjunction with nutrition. Did that help? Okay. It can get complicated. I don't even fully understand it. People ask often because there's other products as well that have energy put into it, and they're like, how is this done? What machine is that? I don't know, right? I know how to use my cell phone, I don't know how my cell phone works. So.
I was going to ask you, I mean, we're going through all this now, where do you go with a patient? Where do they go that you diagnose them and you find out what vitamins and minerals they're lacking in and what they need? Do they do that at Total Health and Wyandotte, or? Well,
this is actually tricky legal territory. Nobody other than a medical practitioner is allowed to diagnose or treat anybody, period. And I'm from Canada. If you go to Canada and you go to a natural practitioner, they have to make you sign a document first that says, everything I say is nonsense. I need you to sign this, right? It's a no liability form.
We don't have really any naturopath, because I would love to find one around here, but there is no naturopath doctors around here.
And I don't know about in Michigan, but they might not even legally be able to diagnose you. So the way that we get around this is we don't diagnose people. When people come...
How do you know what we're supposed to be doing with Dr. Wallach's products?
That's a good question. So everybody needs the same nutrients. All vertebrates actually need all the same nutrients in different proportions. So we know that. All those bad foods on the list harm everybody, right? It's not that Betty gets a different list than you, right? Everybody has the same basic list. You can get more detailed. Andrew doesn't do well with green peppers. I can eat all the green peppers I want, but we both need to avoid the gluten and the oil, because the gluten will screw up both of our intestines and the oil will kill us both, right? But you can have different sensitivities to proteins. But when somebody comes to us, I ask them what diagnosis they have, and I ask them what problems they have. Basically is what we do. We ask them their age, their weight, their height, their sex, all the diagnoses that they've been given, all the symptoms that they have, if they're on any drugs, if they're on any supplements, if they have all their organs, super important one, you could be missing your gallbladder, it could really screw the thing up if you don't address that and fill in the gaps that's missing. You can get a hair analysis and you can see what you're missing. We're still going to give you everything. If you come to us with a hair analysis form and says, I'm low in zinc, I'm low in vitamin E, I'm low in selenium, we're going to just give it to you all anyways, right? It could also, the hair analysis could show you that you have certain toxicities in you that are affecting you and not Betty. You could have heavy metals in you that we need to address with a heavy metal detox. But honestly, the protocol does not change that much person to person. What really changes it is if you're pregnant or nursing, if you're on your deathbed with liver cancer, I'm not going to give you a liver detox, for instance. If you have your gallbladder removed, you know, these things can change the protocol, but generally not. It's more a matter of someone like you. If you have a more serious problem, you're just going to want to take it more serious. That's the only thing that's going to change. And I have to just say about the diagnosis, often the diagnosis doesn't help. First of all, psychologically, it allows you to identify with an illness. We don't like that, right? You are not a diabetic, for instance. You're a diabetic in. It is a process, right? You have a blood sugar problem. It is a process. It is not you. You are not the blood sugar problem. You are not a cancer patient, right? You are a human being with a cancer problem or something like that. So the diagnosis doesn't help psychologically. And the diagnosis is just a name for a group of symptoms. It could be the same problem with a different name, right? Huntington's disease, ALS, MS, like Lou Gehrig's disease. These are all the same problem with different names. It doesn't help people to identify and join the MS society or the ALS society or whatever. Same thing with Crohn's, irritable bowel, diverticulitis. These are the exact same problem in a different area in the intestine, right? Or with the ALS, MS. These are the same problem, Parkinson's, same problem, different part of the brain. So the diagnosis, in my mind, it confuses things. And I don't like to name diseases because it's almost like diseases don't even exist, right? What is a disease? When you understand that the body's just failing because it doesn't have enough of what it needs or because it's got too much toxicity, what good is having a name for it, right? And again, with the Parkinson's, Lou Gehrig's, and MS, it's a good example. You can keep hacking away at the tree with an axe. You don't know exactly which way the tree is going to fall, right? And to us, it doesn't matter. We just want to keep the tree strong. That's it. I hope that helped.
I would like to do the raffle, give away the products, and then if people want to leave, they can leave, and then if people want to stay, can ask you more questions, if you're willing to stay.
Absolutely, and it's probably been like an hour and a half too, so it's...
Yes, an hour and a half. And thank,
Oh, you didn't get a card?
And by the way, I appreciate all of you for coming out and sitting through this, and I know it can be quite technical and tedious, but before any other questions, Betty's going to come up and do a raffle for you guys, and then yes, we will stay and we'll do some more questions too.
How about turmeric? Is that,
Does anybody else not?
We'll talk about
this. Did everybody get a card?
does turmeric help kill cancer?
Betty, let me address that one just before you go. If you see research that says this compound kills cancer, you have to look closely at it. Does it kill it in a petri dish, right? Or are they looking at cell cultures? Usually, that's what it is. Usually they're saying this has an amazing response in a petri dish, and that's great. With human beings, you just need to know that the environment is everything. This is your petri dish. So you need to get rid of the bad foods, you need to have all the 9 essential nutrients, that's your substrate. And then if something like fucoidin that we mentioned earlier, or vitamin B17 or whatever, if that's shown to have a positive effect on cancer, that's in addition to the basics. Most people are failing because of the basics, not because of a B17 deficiency or a fucoidin deficiency or whatever, kelp, sea greens. These are amazing substances, but if the body's environment isn't addressed, you're not going to get an amazing result from them.
What is your opinion of cannabis?
It's a medicine.
Yes.
So, medicine, nutrition.
Well, not really. Cannabis is a plant.
Yep, and all plants produce medicine. There's some medicinal benefit to all plants. Cannabis happens to be one of the stronger ones. It also happens to be the latest craze, right? We've been through this with many others as well. Kelp is one of them, noni juice is one of them, mangosteen is another. A long list of awesome plant compounds. What gets lost in that is just this is nature's bounty. Nature has provided us with numerous medicines. The problem is that most of us are going to medicines when we have a nutritional problem, right? All these diseases, remember Dr. Wallach's all this work here, every animal and every human being that dies of a nutritional deficiency, or dies of natural causes actually dies of a nutritional deficiency disease. There's no such thing as a cannabis deficiency, even though we have reactors for it. By the way, I've used cannabis for a long time too. It's not, I'm bashing it. Same thing with noni, same thing with all these. We don't have a noni deficiency, right? You can get antioxidants from all over the plant world. You can get medicines from all over the plant world. Many of them act very, very similar. And cannabis, it is phenomenal. Problem is, and by the way, I remember listening to Dr. Wallach on the radio a few years ago when Colorado legalized. And someone asked him, what do you think cannabis legalization is going to do for the health of people in Colorado? And Dr. Wallach says, it's going to make it a lot worse. Why? Because cure, or for help, when they had a nutritional problem. So they're spending their money, and it's quite expensive, by the way, to treat yourself with any medicine, whether it's natural or not. It costs way more to take cannabis than it does your daily dose of nutrients. Most people, by the way, $5 to $8 is on the high end of what they should expect to pay for an awesome supplement program. And most people spend a lot more than that on their CBD or THC or whatever. So Dr. Wallach's point, and it took me a while to get it, I said, well, that's kind of harsh. How does having access to an amazing medicine make the health worse? Because they spend their money on the medicine instead of spending it on the nutrition. It's because they put research money and they put government money and they put billboards and stores and economy into the medicine. It needs to be into the nutrition. If we do nutrition properly, we don't need medicine. Even the best medicine.
Is he on CKLW once in a blue moon?
Pardon?
Is he on CKLW once in a blue moon?
He has been years ago.
I don't know what CKLW is.
It's a radio station.
Okay.
In Canada.
Broadcast from Windsor.
Oh, I don't know. He's on 1,300 radio stations every day, 5 days a week. 2 shows 5 days a week. So 10 shows per week on 1,300 radio stations. But not that one, I believe. So I want to let Betty come up here and do the raffle.
Yep.
And she's doing it.
I want the others let people go, but you can stay as long as.
And I want to definitely thank the ministers as well. Reverend Anita, I believe we haven't met, but it's an honor to come out here and be able to give this message truly. And Dr. Wallach, by the way, he does believe that he was given this information by divine right. Right? He stumbled upon this information starting at 9 years old. And I also believe that I'm carrying on this position with the same thing. I wasn't looking for this information, right?
So if we want more information on Dr. Dr. Wallach, we can go on his, there's a website or anything like that?
There's numerous websites, there's numerous books here as well, which I highly, highly recommend because you get the full story.